everybody always says as they walk in the door and I greet them, they always say, thank you for opening your home. And really, the pleasure is all ours. Because with a place like this and a day like this, for us to be able to share it with our colleagues and friends is really a gift to us. So we thank you for coming. And now, there are a number of people that are going to say a few words. And of course we have a featured speaker today, and I'll be introducing him. But first I wanted to introduce our very fine, lovely, very hard-working, very accomplished dean.
Well, I'm going to add my thanks to Lee and Pam. This is absolutely the icing on the cake. It's such a beautiful place to remember why we're doing what we're doing. And if we want the view behind us to continue, we will continue on our efforts in advancing sustainable business practices. And thanks to everybody who came today and from all across campus, really. It's not a College of Business thing, it's a Appalachian State University thing and beyond. And so whatever way that we in the College of Business can help to partner with others on campus in the community to really do business for good and to make the world a better place. That is our mission, that is our desire, and we're so thankful to have had the wonderful speakers that we had coming here today. I think a couple of them are still with us at the Dunstans. We had John from 7th Generation, who I think had to leave a bit early. He is taking his daughters to Iceland, I believe. But I think we still have Vance Rolla, and we also have Joby Carlson and Colgate Palmolive and Walmart here with us for at least a few more minutes. Thank you two so much for making the time. We learn so much from our partners who come and share what they are trying to do in their businesses, and hearing their journeys and knowing really that they were the pioneers. And you'll hear from a great pioneer a minute from now about how truly difficult it was to really bring that knowledge to corporations. And even now, sometimes we were having dinner last night and I was hearing, well, you know, we're the sustainability side and that's the business side. I'm like, wait a minute, no. You need to be at the table with the business side. You should be part of the business side, because really we're not going to solve this thing in pockets, and we can't be thinking about it separately. And so I am just so blessed to be part of a university and a business school that really are giving the knowledge to the students and sending them out as ambassadors to be the change agents. And thank you again to those of you who have worked in this space for so many years. The job is going to be easier for our students. It's not going to be easy, but it will be easier because the conversation and the work has already begun. So thank you so much. I'm privileged to be a part of this group. All of you contribute to the effort, and we wouldn't be who we are today if it weren't for everybody here, so thank you.
There's so many people to thank and recognize. A person in absentia today who started Business for Good is Jim Westermann, and I know he's with us in spirit today, and he's hoping that we have a great afternoon and a great day. And I sent him a little email this morning saying we miss him. And of course, the person that took over this administrative task is Dean Marty Mesner, Assistant Dean Marty Mesner. Where are you, Marty?
Back here.
Thank you for all you've done. And those of you who enjoyed the animals, Nina Fischester.
Very good.
Nina Fischester from Lees McRae College has brought the animals for us to enjoy and to experience. Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you, Louise McCrae, our sister school across the way. Thank you very much. A special welcome and thank you to Dr. Lee Ball, who is in charge of our sustainability at the university. Dr. Lee Ball, where are you? Every day of his life, he's juggling so many things associated with sustainability, and I've gotten to know, and Pam and I have gotten to know Lee in the last year and a half, 2 years. Does extraordinary work, never stops, always going. And he is standing with a group of young people, students, and who we are so proud of. For years, they have been working on the solar vehicle, and the solar vehicle has become a part of the things that we're so proud of and that represent everything that Appalachian is trying to do. So the team is here, the Synergy team, who has come in second this year, came in second in the national competition. So the only thing about this year and next year that you need to know is next year is number one, right? Okay. Now, it's my pleasure, great pleasure, to introduce our speaker for this reception. His name is Andy Acho. I need to tell you a little story about last night. So when we were engaging Andy to come and speak to us, to be the reception speaker for this event, we talked back and forth, and he decided that he would like to be here, and we were clearly wanting him to be here if he could possibly do it. And in the end, he said, well, how many students will be there? And I said, well, this is mostly faculty, Andy. And he said, well, how about I teach a class the night before? And well, we said, oh yeah, I mean, same fee, right? And he said, listen, this is what I do. This has been my life. This has been my calling at Ford. And I love to speak to the young people. I get energy from them, and I hope I give them some. So the story of last night, 6 o'clock last night, in one of the large classrooms in the School of Business, was that the place was overflowing, and Andy knocked them dead. Just did a fantastic job. The students just loved it. So let me tell you a little bit about Andy. He is part of a evolution and transformation of one of the greatest, largest, most successful, most iconic companies, worldwide companies in the world, Ford Motor. And Andy was plucked in the 1980s out of the executive group by Bill Ford Jr. to be the person that would lead Ford through an evolution from polluter to a steward of the earth. And Andy gives tremendous credit to Bill Ford Jr., but when you think about what Andy has done in his career, over 40 years, and about 35 of that working on worldwide environmental initiatives on behalf of Ford, and frankly on behalf of all of us. That has been his mission, and he has done it. And what's so interesting about the way Andy has worked in his life and what he has done, and how that so clearly relates to what we are constantly thinking about. You know, this is a business school, right? And we're trying to help students understand how they relate to money and how they relate to the world and how they relate to an ethical world. And that is a challenge. That is a challenge because there are many forces in the world that are telling them to be totally money-centric. And we have to deal with that if we're going to educate them properly. And so when we have people like Andy, who has taken Ford through the transition, taken the whole company through the transition from polluter to steward of the earth, to innovator as it relates to technology and sustainability. We're talking, and we're having someone speak to us who is actually kind of embodies the way the world is moving now. The tipping point has been reached. I was just saying to somebody on the deck, even the climate deniers are sweating their butts off. Right? We know that.
Literally.
So anyway, it is my great, great pleasure to introduce Andy Acho.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Pam, who, by the way, Dee and I say, one of our dearest friends is Stephanie Powers. Do you know who she is? She was in Heart to Heart, Woman from Uncle. She is the executive director of of the William Holden Wildlife Preserve in Kenya, Africa. Speaks 7 languages. She's helped me and Ford try to save real jaguars in different countries. We actually saved some wild Mustangs. She came to me and said, there are some Mustangs that are being slaughtered with the meat being sent to Belgium and France. You've got to do something. You guys have a Mustang. You got to do something. I went and I had to fork over some money. We physically paid and bought the horses and released them in South Dakota. So that was kind of neat. Well, first of all, what a wonderful venue. This is fantastic. What a great conference. Business for good. What great speakers. It's fantastic. It really is great. The only thing wrong is a little bit about Lee way giving credit to a guy that doesn't deserve anything like that. But I was part of the team. I will admit to that. Let me tell you about Lee now. You know he's a lawyer. You know he teaches finance. Super smart guy. And he talked about when we were negotiating, I said, let me teach a class for free and all that. Well, while we were talking about whether or not I would be your speaker, Pam was already sold. And Lee said, can I ask you some personal questions? I said, sure, anything. I don't have anything to hide. Did I read that you were not born in America? I said, that's right. I was born in Baghdad. Did you come here legally? I said, it took my dad 19 years to get a visa, applying every year. By the time he got it, he was married and had 3 kids, and he couldn't bring us. So we were left alone for 2 years, sharing one house with 4 other families. But we came here. So you're an American citizen. I said, Lee, where are you going with this? He said, just a couple more questions. I said, yes, I'm an American citizen. He said, how do you feel about the United States and the Constitution? I said, I've traveled the world. I think it's the greatest country on earth. He says, one more question. How do you feel about the First Amendment? I said, Lee, I'm probably the biggest advocate of free speech you'll ever meet. He says, good, I'd like to give one of those free. Never negotiate with a lawyer that has financial backing. Ladies and gentlemen, I will joke about many things, but what I don't joke about is sustainability. Let me tell you why. There's a Native American Indian saying that I love, I've modified somewhat to fit what we need, and it goes like this. The earth belongs to all of our people, some living, some dead, but most have not yet been born. Most have not yet been born. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the bottom line of sustainability, of environmental stewardship. We have an obligation, a moral obligation, to save the generation for the future. Which gets us into my simplified version of what sustainability is. Sustainability is the ability of this generation to have the materials and provide for its needs without sacrificing the ability of future generations to have the materials and provide for their needs. Now, why do we even have to think that that's something that you have to teach. The reason is because the last 3-4 generations, we have had the materials, we have produced the goods. What did we do after that? We threw it away. Where is away? There is no away. You can talk about landfills if you want. But let me tell you, on August 5th, which was not that long ago, within the last 3 weeks, CBS has a program called Sunday Morning. And on that program, on the 5th, they had a professor from the University of California, Santa Barbara, talking about plastic and how long it takes for the plastic to decompose. It's 3 digits, not 1 or 2. But what's worse is it's going into our oceans. It's going into our water. It's going into our fish. It's going into our food. It's going into our salt water. It's going into our drinking water. Wow. You know what? We can't have that. Well, let me tell you about the gentleman that was mentioned by Lee, and that's William Clay Ford Jr., the great-grandson of Henry Ford. I had no background like these gentlemen who actually studied sustainability, studied environmental stewardship, and all the rest. I had a regular career. I worked in manufacturing, I worked in engineering, product planning, I worked in marketing. I was responsible worldwide for sales and marketing of one division. I was a marketing manager for a Ford people mover system. We believed and we built computer-controlled, electronically powered driverless vehicles in 1974. I sold systems and I talked to governors, I talked to senators, I talked to others. Everybody wanted them. They're great. What a solution for the inner city. But everybody else wanted somebody else to pay for it. And so therefore I ended up selling 2 systems, and within 4 years, we shut it down. We got involved in new businesses to create windows to new technologies. We got involved in holographic interferometry, powdered metallurgy, biomedical instrumentation, anaerobic adhesives, and other stuff I don't understand. But then, come 1990, in my case, 88, Bill Ford was appointed Director of Strategy, Business Strategy for the world. He also became a member of the Board of Directors. And when he became a member of the Board of Directors, certain board members said to Bill, "You have to stop being a member of these environmental organizations." He didn't give them the answer they were hoping for, but he still became a member of the board. His name is on the building, is one of the reasons. But the other reason, he deserves it. This guy is super smart. And Bill said, "I'm not proud of Ford." Remember now, this is 30 years ago. "I'm not proud of Ford." He said to me personally, when it comes to the environment, all we do is fight regulations. And when the regulations become law, all we do is meet minimum requirements. What the hell kind of company is that? So he created a team, and I remember the instruction. The instruction was, your job will be not to work, because I said, pick somebody else that knows that stuff. I don't even know what EPA stood for, And he said, we have lots of people that know that stuff. Unfortunately, you know what? All we're doing is regulation. What I want this team to do is find a way to do things that are good for the environment, good for the bottom line. Does that sound like the title of today's conference? So we started out by doing the normal reduce, reuse, recycle and all that kind of stuff. We saved millions by doing that. But he said, that's not enough. We use so much materials, what can you do about that? Created a team, and we got volunteers. I couldn't care less what your level was. How passionate are you? So we set a guideline for a recycling action team. I know recycling isn't at the top of the food chain, but you just heard what happens when you don't. So anyway, with the recycling action team, we set 2 guidelines. We want to use post-consumer recycled plastic and recycled rubber with 2 guidelines. Number 1, the product had to be as good as or better than the product you replaced, or we won't use it. We're not going to sacrifice durability, quality, or reliability in the name of the environment. First, you're not helping the environment. Second, you're going to bankrupt us. Number 2, it had to make financial sense. Now for you business students, let me tell you how I defined it. I did not define it as having the suppliers charge us less. What I said was, make it make economic sense. Work with our engineers so you could find a way, whether it's process or other stuff, that makes the cost go down so you can make more money and we can make more money. Okay, that's 1990. We started out talking to big companies, GE, Dow, DuPont, and some of the others. And they gave us good meetings. But there's a phrase that I use a lot. And that is, never confuse motion with action. Don't tell me how many meetings you attended. What did you accomplish? So I asked the team, I had these guys that understood plastics, which I didn't, is there anybody we could buy from now? Well, I said, there's a company in Troy, Alabama, by the name of KW. There's a guy by the name of Kenny Campbell, and he's been recycling plastic battery cases. I said, why don't we buy from them? Well, that's not how it works. You got to get a supplier approval. Well, how do I get a supplier approval? You have to have a Q1 flag. You got to be able to raise the flag. How long does that take? A couple years. No. You got to have some action. Well, do you want us to go down there and work with them? So Mike Padlin, Tony Brooks, two guys I remember well, although I forgot one of the names when I was teaching the class yesterday. They went down there, and within 4 months, we raised the Q1 flag, gave them an order for millions of pounds. Since then, KW is the world's largest plastic recycler. They're producing 700 to 800 million pounds of recycled materials every year. The amount of materials Ford bought from them just with that one action is 425 million pounds. How much is 425 million? You can't visualize that, even you smart geniuses here. So what I did is I went to the internet, found what an elephant weighs in Africa, what an elephant weighs in Asia, what a male one, female one, divided by 4, found out what their length is. The amount of material we kept from going to landfills together produced the equivalent of 325,000 elephants, and you don't know how much that is? That is, if you line them up in one line, it's a distance between this deck and Knoxville, Tennessee. A line of elephants that didn't go to landfills, wow. And we saved $75 million. All of you know about Interface and what a great job they do. Well, in 1994, we went and pushed a company called Wellman, who was in the nylon business. And we said, well, there's nylon in carpeting. Can't you give us recycled nylon? Well, again, we worked with them for quite a while, and we ended up buying the equivalent of 27 million square feet of recycled carpeting every year from Wellman. We went to the Society of Plastics Engineers, who awarded Ford the Environmental Award for 1994 and 1995 for carpet to car parts. The reason I'm telling that story is because one evening I was putting on a tuxedo. My wife Dee says, why a tuxedo? I said, well, I've got to go to Cobo Hall, 2,000 engineers standing up there receiving an award on behalf of Ford. She says, why are you getting the award? I don't know. I mean, somebody had to be picked. I didn't pick myself. She says, what does the award do? What do you mean, what does the award do? The award doesn't do anything. She says, well, now I know why they're giving it to you. Well, listen, I'll be short on the other recycling. We use 50 million 2-liter soda pop bottles a year. By the way, that's polyethylene terephthalate. I know that. Yeah. That's enough to cover a 400-acre lake shore to shore. We used 1 billion bottle caps in cotton bale wraps to produce 24 million separate plastic parts in one plant when Bill Ford was the head of climate control. By the way, it's nothing to do with the weather. That's air conditioning, heating. Right. Every one of the parts had at least 25% post-consumer recycled materials. Well, I'll stop with that, other than we use blue jeans and we use computer housings and all the rest. I want to talk about tires for a minute. You realize 300 million tires are, quote, retired every year. That's almost one for every American. What do we do with them? For the most part, tires either went to landfill or were used for tire-derived fuel. Well, we pushed. That was very difficult. We couldn't make it happen very well. We ended up with brake pedal pads first, But then I remember seeing a commercial. Most of you will not remember this. A baby on top of a tire floating on a lake. Some of you remember that?
Oh yeah.
All right. We do have some other chronologically gifted people like me. So we went to Michelin. We went to Michelin and we worked with them, and they produced tires with post-consumer recycled rubber in them that we used on our F-Series trucks in the mid-1996, 1997. But that was just a start. You know, we ended up in the year 2001 with 8 to 10 million tires we had to take back. And what did we do with them? Well, Bill didn't want to see them piled up at dealerships. Find a solution. We talked to several people. We finally found one supplier that was able to take these tires, cut them into chunks, freeze them with liquid nitrogen. They became like glass. You shatter them over and over again until they get pulverized into different sizes. The biggest chunks became mulch. The mulch at my house is 11 years old. We sold 3 million pounds to our own employees. The next size, playground. If you've seen rubber in a playground, you can have it in 6 different colors. If you do it right, you can have a child fall 12 feet and not get hurt. In fact, even Obama's had it in the White House when young ladies were younger. We ended up having a supplier who said he could only sell half of that. So I went and asked for some money. And what we did is we donated about 50 million pounds. You know, where did we go? We went to nonprofits. We went to schools. We went to colleges. We ended up with football fields, soccer fields, running tracks, therapeutic riding arenas. Therapeutic riding arenas. Think about rubber on an oval. You walk on it, the horses walk on it, it's softer, it's quieter, it makes the horses calmer, and they take physically and mentally handicapped kids for therapy. And something about a horse's gait does something to a kid's spine. I've had mothers tell me that their kids can now walk after years of this therapy. That's helping to make the world a better place, isn't it? So anyway, here's a neat story. Right now, the tire industry is recycling to a micronized powder. There's a company called Lehigh Technologies in Tucker, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. I've been working with their CEO for quite some time. And their rubber is now used in 500 million tires so far. And there's a guy by the name of Alan Barton, who's the CEO. And I was giving a speech last October, where were we, Tucson or whatever. I got a call while I was giving a speech. As soon as I got off, what's going on, Alan? We just got bought out by Michelin. So it's kind of cool. So now they're selling recycled rubber to 7 of the top 10 tire manufacturers. Except you don't hear about it. I failed with the tire industry, getting them to, you know, lead by example, but I think it's happening now with Michelin. Well, that's enough about the recycling. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things. I'm not going to go into detail because we have an entire environmental quality office, but I'm adding a couple things only because of things I heard in the speeches today. One of the things I'm talking about is I heard that we need to be doing things in the communities where we have facilities. And I hadn't planned on talking about this, but we created the Conservation and Environmental Grants Program in 45 countries. And what we did is we set money individually for each country. We had a panel locally in that country decide who gets our money. We had nothing to say. There were some executives that said to me that was dumb because they might pick something against Ford, and I said, so what? You know what? We ended up not only helping others, and they were all nonprofits or individuals. We didn't help corporations. We didn't help governments. And by doing that, we were never the bad guy. I never said you can't have money. Somebody else said that from your own country. So it was kind of cool. So went country after country. The only thing I didn't like about it is I remember going to, where was it? Ukraine. When I went to the Ukraine to give out our checks, they thought that was so cool. They honored me with 3 camera crews, and they took me to Chernobyl with a Russian scientist who spoke no English. but was able to provide me a Geiger counter to put around my neck. So another thing we got involved with was Conservation International. I don't know if you know about them, but Conservation International worries about that 1% of the Earth's surface that has the greatest amount of biodiversity with the greatest amount of danger of being eliminated. We donated $25 million. That wasn't just because of the money. Bill Ford was on the board. Another guy that was on the board was Harrison Ford. Again, the only reason I'm talking about that is because I want to pick on my wife, who's been married to me for 573 months. In case you guys don't do math real quick, it'll be 48 years and 3 months. And we had an event in Brazil, in the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil. We had Harrison Ford with us. And she says, "You're going to spend 3 days with Harrison Ford?" Yeah. She said, "Well, get some pictures." Well, I said, "Dear, I'm not sure I'm going to be close enough to get a picture." She said, "Did I say you have to be in the picture?" But the story ended up well. For the next 4 years, we had dinner with Harrison Ford in New York. She got her annual hug and kiss on the cheek. Getting away from the recycling, let's talk a little bit about manufacturing. I'm only going to give you one example. Well, first, because it was mentioned, ISO 14001 is an environmental management system where all aspects of the environment, air, land, and water are addressed, and you have to have a plan to be able to improve them. And that's done by our Environmental Quality Office. Manufacturing, though, we have a plant called the Ford Rouge Assembly Plant. This is a plant that was built by Henry Ford so that he could have raw materials come in one end and do everything inside, whether it's glass, whether it's steel, whether it's paint, all that stuff, and then have completed vehicles go out the other end to his own ships, his own trucks, his own trains. Well, that served well. We had as many as Ford, not we, I'm a retired executive. Ford had as many as 100,000 people working in that facility. Well, over the years, it went into disrepair to the point where the finance people told Bill we should tear it down. It's a brownfield site. It's no good. He looked at him and he says, "This is ridiculous. That's history. We have people working there. What you guys need to do is find a way to turn this icon of 20th century manufacturing, which is not good, to an icon of 21st century sustainability. I wanted to be the most environmentally responsible plant you can put together." Well, none of us knew how to do that. So he hired an architect, William McDonough. How many of you have heard about Bill McDonough? He, among other things, wrote Cradle to Cradle, not Cradle to Grave. What a genius. He and I disagreed on some things because he said I was wasting my time, and I said, no, we're turning things around, because every time I talk to others, whether it's Toyota and others, they were buying the things that we started with. And so, but anyway, he came up with the Ford Rouge that now has the world's largest living roof, 10.4 acres of sedum, and it absorbs 5 million gallons of water. Our parking lot is porous. When it rains, it goes through a parking lot, it goes into a swale, high-priced word for ditch. As it travels, it goes through bushes and trees, and it gets filtered. And we employees planted the bushes and the trees. So it gets filtered, and it slows the water from going to the Rouge River, and the roof keeps 5 million gallons from going to the Rouge River, so it never overflows. We never have to worry about that. And what did it cost us? Zero. Why? Because we had put in the budget a stormwater management system, and we didn't have to have it. Not only that, we had phyto remediation. I also got the very first, one of the first, Bill might have gotten the first one, jars of honey from our bees. There was all kinds of things that were done. And the roof lasts twice as long than a traditional roof. The roof allows heating and air conditioning to be better because you don't need as much heat in the winter, you don't need as much air conditioning during the summer. We also did a minor thing. He took me up to the 12th floor and looked down. He said, "What do you see down there?" Beautiful manicured lawn. He says, "Yeah, get rid of it." I said, "What?" He says, "Look, you've got to cut this, you've got to edge it, you got to fertilize it, you got to water it, and then you do it again and again. What should I do?" "I don't know, you figure it out." Well, I couldn't figure it out, but we brought in our Ford land people, and we ended up planting 90 acres of sunflowers. And we have fox living in the sunflowers. Our cost went down dramatically, and Bill got a lot of letters from neighbors as they drove by Dearborn, Michigan. Well, let's get away from that area, and let's talk about what is not sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, today's automotive industry, the way it's operating and continues to operate, will not take us to the future. Does it make sense, ladies and gentlemen, for us to put up with all of the traffic that I'm not talking about the accident we ran into coming over here. I'm talking about all of the traffic that you have to put up with. Does it make sense to be able to have a vehicle park that is a billion vehicles right now in the world, go to 2 billion if we continue doing what we're doing today? Does it make sense that there are some cities where people that cross the street have to wear masks? Does it make sense for these inner cities, urban areas, to devote more than a quarter of their real estate for parking? Does it make sense that we have the same kind of mobility solutions that were generated back when we had only 100 million people in America, not 350 million? When we had 2 billion people in the world, not 7.5 billion people. Actually, you can go a step further. Does it make sense for each and every one of us to own our own vehicle, pay for it for 24 hours of use a day, but only use it 1 hour a day and have it parked for 23 hours? Now, it makes sense in some cases, but down the road, I'm not sure you think it does. Well, let's talk about how we got here. First, the big transportation evolution was back when we had, when ASU, 1899, Henry Ford, 1903. At that point in time, America had 20 to 25 million horses. Well, the horses got some people around to some places. They were able to do some work. They worked on the farms. They carried some food from the farms. But they created a mess. How much of a mess? Well, the health department in Syracuse, New York, which only used 15,000 horses, by the way, that's less than 1/10 of 1%, created a pile of manure that covered an acre of land 175 feet high. Now multiply that by 10,000. Don't multiply that by, I don't want to visualize that when I'm looking at something this beautiful. So that doesn't make sense. So let's look at the outlook. Where are we headed? I think we ought to have a future where we don't see all that congestion. I think we ought to have a future where cars can move smoothly and not be on top of each other. We ought to have a place so that the air is clean. We ought to have a place where bikers can bike and people can walk. Think about that. Also, we've had a problem in terms of deaths on the highways.
40,000 per year.
1 million people die a year in the world from car accidents. In the U.S., last year it was 40,000. The year before that was 40,000. The year before that was something like 36 or 37,000. 2 days ago, they announced that in the first 6 months of this year, traffic deaths went down a little. 18,720 deaths between January and June. That's more than 3,000 deaths a month. That's more than 100 a day. That's, in my talk here, it's going to be 6 people will die, I'm sorry, just out of statistics. So we need to do something about that. Well, I think the outlook is positive because when we talked about, we have negatives and then we have innovations. Innovations will help us. We have 3 different innovations that I think will work. Number 1, you've got a mobility solution where you have shared riding. Number 2, you have the upcoming electric vehicles. And number 3, you have leading toward autonomous vehicles. Well, mobility solutions, you already know about Uber, you already know about Lyft. Uber last year had $4 billion rides that they gave. At the same time, Lyft, which is much smaller, last year, I remember during the middle of the year, big announcement, they now reached 1 million riders a day. So it's happening, but it isn't just Uber, it isn't just Lyft. You've got several companies, including GM and Ford, providing shared mobility, and you're going to see much more of that. Electric vehicles. On electric vehicles, you know, that's not a new technology. You realize Henry Ford was involved with Edison, Thomas Alva Edison, the manager or the owner who had Tesla work for him. And they tried it, it didn't work. Later on, it was tried again because California really pushed for it around 1999, 2000. Ford got into the business. We bought a company in Norway. We had the Think Mobility and Think City, and we have a plant that could produce 10,000 vehicles a year. We expected to sell 5,000 a year. In 3 years, we sold 1,000. General Motors did even more than us. They had the EV1, spent tens of millions of dollars. They went out of business. But earlier I mentioned Conservation International. One of the board members of Conservation International was Gordon Moore. Some of you may know that name. He's the father of the phrase, technology doubles every 2 years, later modified to every 18 months. What a neat guy. Getting to meet him just because I was a backup guy was fantastic. But with technology doubling, we now have electric vehicles that can actually have a future. In the US, all of us know about Tesla. We got to give him credit. He's a genius. He really pushed for us to do that. The real leaders right now is China. China has put together a plan where every year you're going to have more and more electric vehicles. Right now, new vehicles, less than 4% are electric. I will tell you, in the not too distant future, electrics will surpass internal combustion engines. Within China, there are a couple companies I know personally because I've talked to them. One of them is BYD, Build Your Dream. It's the biggest electric seller in China. The reason I know them is because when Warren Buffett bought into them, I bought into them. The other company is called Geely. Geely is a company that bought Ford Motor Company, Volvo's. We own Volvo, so we sold it to Geely. They decided they were going to invest quite a bit in it, and has announced every new vehicle they're going to introduce is going to be electric. Another good company. But, so those are the electrics. Before I go any further, we have Team Sun Energy that know about electric and sun power, and I'd like to ask one of their representatives to say a word or two. Let's give her a hand.
My name is Callie Smith, and I'm a student at Appalachian State. I'm actually a senior environmental economics major with a minor in sustainable technology, and I came to Appalachian State solely for sustainability. And, you know, growing up in North Carolina, I knew there was only one option for the college that I could go to when I knew that that was what I wanted to pursue. And since coming here, I've been able to become the business director for Team Sunergy, Appalachian State's solar vehicle team, which is probably the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of, because first off, I get to, you know, in 40 years, I can look at people and say, oh yeah, you know, I raced solar cars across the Outback, I raced across the West, which is just, first off, an extraordinary experience, but the real extraordinary thing is being a part of a team of people who, despite being a part of, you know, they want to develop the technologies, but they want to do it the right way. Our team there are things that we can sacrifice when building a car, just to build one that goes fast, but we don't do that. We make sure that we do it right from the ground up. We make sure that we source as many parts in North Carolina as we can, as locally as possible. We purposely choose, you know, solar cells on our car to be silicon instead of gallium arsenide, because silicon is one of the most widely available resources, whereas gallium arsenide is a little more tricky when you get into it. And I'm also a part of a group of people who all want to be a part of sustainability, and they're pushing other people in the fields that we see to be a part of it. We actually, this past month, won a sustainability award from the Boone Chamber of Commerce for being leaders in sustainability, because we go out there and we promote what we're doing, and really at the core of everything, our mission is to encourage people to rethink the way they view transportation. So I encourage each and every one of you, if you get a chance, our car's parked out front, we'd love to talk to all of you. Thank you.
I'd like to invite the rest of the team to come down here. If you'll let me have a picture with you, I will make the first $1,000 donation for your Australia trip.
Wow.
Hey.
Cool.
All set?
Can we get names? We'd like to have the names.
I will be happy to have her give you that right after the speech.
Okay,
Just
okay.
give me 5 more minutes and I'm done. Thank you. By the way, I encourage the rest of you guys to make your own personal donation. That's not, by the way, he doesn't like it when I say we gave Conservation International 25 million. I gave nothing. It was Ford Motor Company.
Yeah.
This is me. I'm donating. So this time it is us. Now, let's assume we get electric vehicles and everybody has an electric vehicle. What good is it, other than helping the environment, I agree, if we still have congestion and can't get anywhere? You know, we've got to have a little bit more than that. And what you're seeing already is some autonomous vehicle technology that's going into our regular vehicles. Dee and I drove down here from Detroit. Well, okay, Dee drove from Detroit. I did mostly reading. And she had it mostly on speed control. And we have an adaptive speed control. What that means is she says to the car, I want 3 car lanes in front of me all the time, no matter what car. If a car pulls in front of her when she's going 70 miles an hour, her car will slow down. When the car moves out of the way, it'll speed up. When she gets in a left turn lane, it speeds up so you can pass. It's kind of neat. That's just one thing. You also have blindside detectors. We also have brakes that are sensitive. We also have parallel parking. You can park it for you. We did it once in a small town, and as you pull up, it'll tell you when the spot is available. Then you let go of the wheel, push a button, and you put your hands up, and it starts parking for you, and the people are looking to see what's going on. She doesn't like it because she's a good parallel driver. Parker. Anyway, so those are the kinds of things that already exist, and those are the precursors to autonomous vehicles. Who's the leader in autonomous vehicles? Google. Waymo, that's my opinion. They have more than 5 million miles on the road of testing. They have billions of miles that they've tested in their computers. They're not the only ones, though. You know, you've got GM. And let me go back to electric vehicles real quick, and that's Tesla. Again, genius, really pushed, give them lots of credit. He also promised we were going to have a car other people can afford, not the $70,000, $90,000 car, a $35,000 car that'll go well over 200 miles. He was going to be a year ahead of everybody. Guess who did it? No, not Ford, GM. The GM Bolt does that today, and I think that will be one of the vehicles that will really make it. What's happened in the autonomous vehicle area is you've got lots of people that are getting into that business. Electric vehicles, China has 457 different companies that said they're going to have electric vehicles. But autonomous vehicles, you need a lot of money. GM has already announced that they have an LLC, a new corporation, that will be working on autonomous vehicles, and they're inviting outsiders to invest in them. They already have somebody that is out of Japan by the name of SoftBank that has committed $2.25 billion into GM. Ford just last week announced that we created the Ford Autonomous Vehicle LLC, and we're going to have other people invest. And They just announced within the last few days that Alibaba will be working with Ford. That's the Chinese version of Amazon, in case you haven't heard of it. But, you know what? It's not just about investments. It's about making sure that you find a way to make people's lives better. Imagine a world where accidents, I didn't mention, 94% of all those deaths and accidents, driver error. That's why autonomous vehicles will make sense. We have to find a way to be able to make that safe. There was an accident in March where a pedestrian was killed. That really shook some people up. Ladies and gentlemen, there are things that need to be resolved. Technology will be resolved because you can get past some of those issues. Cybersecurity is another one. So safety is important, cybersecurity is important, but even with all that, there's also moral issues that we should be thinking about all the people that are going to not have jobs. But even more important than that, when you program a vehicle, you have to tell it to do certain things. Well, you can tell it to go on green, you can tell it to stop on red, you can tell it not to go faster when it's yellow, so they're going to stop and somebody's going to hit them. But the moral issue I'm worried about is somebody has to program this vehicle to make choices, and those choices will include when you have a pending accident that you can't avoid. There's a truck coming and you can't get out of the way unless you turn left. You're going to be killed. Should you allow that to happen? Or should you say, go ahead and turn left, even if there are 18 school kids you're going to kill? I know that's an easy answer for most, but the answer I get from most people is I want my car to save me, but I want everybody else's car to save society. That's not the right answer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude with something I learned from Bill Ford, and I want to tell you, the credit goes to Bill Ford. I mean, without that push, without getting other people to look at things, even the Ford Rouge plant, he said to me, if Toyota or anybody else asks you what our secrets are, you tell them everything, because we can't make the world a better place by ourselves. Here's what he said. The difference between a good company and a great company is this. A good company offers excellent products and services. A great company not only offers excellent products and services, but strives to make the world a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this conference is called Business for Good, but I think business should shoot for greatness. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I don't know that I thanked Kim Bach and Haley Childers for the great work that they did. Tone, of course, as always. So these things simply wouldn't happen in a smooth way, particularly with a klutz like me, unless we had people that would make it all work. So thank you all. Please stay, drink, eat, listen to the music, take your time, enjoy yourselves for as long as you would like. Pam and I are so happy that you came, and we're glad you enjoyed the view.